To learn more about earning college credits with study hall courses, visit gostudyhall.com or click the link in the description. From elementary school through adulthood, bullies always seem to be there to take your stuff and make you feel about 2 inches tall, all to make themselves feel better, stronger, and more powerful. And it turns out, industrialized empires are a lot like bullies. Throughout history, they've intimidated and invaded smaller, weaker countries to take all their land, resources, and lunch money. And just like the kids in the schoolyard, these empires started choosing sides and forming alliances, fueling the bloodiest conflicts in human history, the 2 world wars. Hi, I'm Rob Fuller, and this is Study Hall, Modern World History. The World Wars didn't just happen out of nowhere. There were lots of complicated reasons that led to these conflicts, and you can spend a whole semester talking about everything that led up to just one of the World Wars. And we're going to be squishing all of that complicated socio-political context into just under 12 minutes. But the most important thing to know is that by the dawn of World War I, the world was so connected that the actions of one country, sometimes even one person, could impact the rest of the globe more than ever before. Many empires, like Britain and France, tried to avoid future conflicts by agreeing to support one another if a rival empire ever declared war. This is known as an alliance, and they hoped that it would make other countries think twice before invading. Because let's be honest, the only thing scarier than a bully is a whole gang of bullies. And other European empires were building powerful alliances too. For instance, in 1879, Germany allied with their next-door neighbor, Austria-Hungary. Germany wanted to protect itself from one of the big empires on the block, Russia. But that made France a little anxious, since Germany had recently defeated them in the Franco-Prussian War. So, just in case, France formed another alliance with Russia, who wanted to keep Austria-Hungary from expanding and knocking on their door. But Britain didn't love this move, and although Britain and France had set aside their old beef, Britain wasn't cool with Russia's attempts to expand east into Asia. So Britain formed an alliance with Japan to defend their respective economic interests in China and Korea. This was quickly becoming more dramatic than a middle school cafeteria. But these were empires, not preteens. And the drama brewing was bigger than who scored an invite to Brian's laser tag birthday party. The stakes were exponentially higher, and the tensions were exacerbated by a little thing called nationalism. Nationalism is the idea that countries should be made up of folks who share a national culture, and that the government should reflect the identities of the citizens. In theory, this doesn't seem so bad. Like a government and its people agreeing on something, you love to see it. But in practice, nationalism led to increased violence and hostility between nations, and national pride soon morphed into something more like, if we're the greatest in the world, then let's take over our neighbors and make them great too. But those neighbors also had national pride and weren't just going to sit there and let this happen. Take Serbia. For the real dish on the Serbs and their neighbors Austria-Hungary, you can check out the previous episodes. But the SparkNotes version goes a little something like this. Serbians living as part of the Austria-Hungarian Empire were pretty much over imperial rule. So when Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie visited Bosnia on June 28, 1914, the Serbs went ahead and assassinated them both. And exactly 1 month later, on July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and World War I was officially on. Now, remember all those alliances? They meant things were about to get really dramatic. Austria was outraged by the assassination, so they called up their ally Germany to watch their back in any conflict on the horizon. And since Serbia had a deal with the Russian Empire, they were going to get involved too. And if Russia was going to join the party, the French were surely going to show up too, in part because of their alliance with Russia, but also to take a stand against their old enemies, the Germans. And odds were, if France was going to get involved, or if Germany got too bossy with their military might, Britain would declare war too, which is just what happened. But not everyone was getting sucked into the drama, at least not at first. There were a couple of neutral players like Belgium, who remained neutral at least until German troops invaded in 1914, demanding passage to go up and around into France. King Albert of Belgium wasn't down for that, so he asked France and Britain for help and kissed neutrality goodbye. And as more and more alliances were made, this vortex of European conflict soon sucked in the whole rest of the world. On one side of the global schoolyard, we had the Triple Entente, sometimes called the Allies, led by France, Britain, and Russia, which included Belgium and Serbia. And on the other side, we had the Central Powers of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Oh, and while the Ottoman Empire hadn't technically joined the Central Powers Club, they did declare war on just about the entire Entente, so they were definitely an honorary member. As the conflict spread, other nations got involved and picked sides. Like when Japan heard the news from Britain through the international gossip mill, well, they held up their end of the Anglo-Japanese alliance and declared war on Germany too. And Germany tried to form an alliance with Mexico against the US, which was the last straw after months of mounting tension, and led the US to join Britain and the Triple Entente. So although Europe's alliances were meant to prevent war, in this case, their agreements sucked everyone into a massive conflict between the world's most influential empires. And while we think of World War I as being a primarily European affair, it wasn't just Europeans in the trenches. This was a global war fought by global empires, including colonized peoples in Africa and Asia, who got dragged into the war on their empire's behalf. When the Triple Entente finally defeated the Central Powers on November 11, 1918, about 20 million people had died. And after the fog of war cleared, the world looked very different. The victorious Entente divided the former Central Powers like they were slicing up a pizza, keeping some tasty slices for themselves and redistributing the remaining Ottoman, German, and Austrian imperial land to create new countries like Poland, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia. And they did so based on the idea of self-determination, that idea that citizens should be represented by a government that reflects their ideals and identity. But the Entente didn't have the firmest grasp on the cultures of these regions, and the new borders didn't actually reflect the views of the nations themselves. Of course, the same courtesy wasn't extended to the colonized people of Asia and Africa either, leading to the rise of nationalist movements in the colonies and the increasing demands for freedom from their colonizers. To try and keep the tentative peace, world leaders signed the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 and created the League of Nations aimed at fostering peace and collaboration between independent nations. It was clear that the same connectedness that led Europe into World War I wasn't going away anytime soon, and hopefully the League of Nations would help countries resolve future international disputes without resorting to violence. Only three things in life are certain: death, taxes, and global conflict. But even the horrors of World War I and the mediation of the League of Nations couldn't convince empires to keep their hands to themselves and deter them from looking for new territories to expand and build more power. So here we go again. Britain's old bud, Japan, needed more natural resources, especially if they wanted to become the biggest, baddest empire in the Pacific. So in 1931, they invaded Manchuria in northern China, installing a puppet government in the region. When the rest of the League politely asked Japan to maybe not invade their neighbors, Japan simply walked out to focus on competition instead of collaboration. And in October 1935, Italian Prime Minister Benito Mussolini invaded the independent African state of Abyssinia, or modern-day Ethiopia, in order to expand his empire and gain resources to ease Italy's economic woes. This was a no-no by League of Nations community standards, and Italy left the alliance 2 years later in 1937. And Mussolini's dreams of empire were in step with another aspiring imperial leader who blew off the League of Nations entirely: Adolf Hitler of Germany. Now, Germany wasn't too happy about losing or having its territory broken up, and Hitler wanted to re-establish German dominance by bringing Slavic countries under his Nazi regime. Hitler was fueled by nationalism too. He believed Germany would be strongest if it could rise as a nation of ethnically pure Germans who all shared the same culture, religion, and appearance. Anyone who didn't meet these standards was to be purged, which led to the mass murder of millions of Jews, Roma, and LGBTQ+ peoples, as well as other minority populations during the Holocaust, which lasted from 1933 to 1945. Hitler's views set Germany on the track of extreme nationalism, one run by an all-powerful leader or dictator and backed by military force. This particular type of political structure is known as fascism, and both Mussolini and Hitler embraced it completely as a way to build immense national power and control pretty quickly. And since Japan, Italy, and Germany had all ditched the League of Nations, they decided to form their own alliance called the Axis Powers. This alliance gave the Axis Powers the confidence they needed to make their imperial dreams come true by any means necessary. So Japan continued to expand into China, and Hitler annexed part of Czechoslovakia and Austria in 1938. But Britain and France did not want to go to war again. So they let Germany keep its newly annexed countries as long as Germany promised not to invade anywhere else. Which, of course, didn't last long since Hitler's forces took control of the rest of Czechoslovakia and Poland in 1939. And for the rest of Europe, this was the last straw. On September 3rd, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany, and suddenly World War II was on. During this World War, the battle lines were drawn between industrial powers that already had big empires and fascist countries that wanted big empires. The allied powers of Britain, France, the Soviet Union, China, the United States, and their colonies all fought Japan, Germany, and Italy to stop the Axis powers from expanding into new territories. Armies used imperial trade networks to travel across land and sea to join the war effort. And these global trade routes became hotspots of conflict since both the Allies and the Axis powers were fighting to keep their supply lines open and their enemies closed. And fighting broke out across the Pacific Ocean between the allied US and China versus Axis Japan in what became known as the Pacific Theater. This global conflict cost millions of lives, but also presented new opportunities for long colonized people to finally fight back against their colonizers. This was certainly the case for the Indian National Army in Burma. In 1941, the Imperial Japanese Army took captive thousands of Indian colonial subjects. But Indian nationalist leader Subhas Chandra Bose took this as an opportunity. Bose struck up a deal with Japan, and with the help of Lakshmi Swaminathan, he organized an Indian army to fight with the Japanese against the British. In the end, it took almost 6 years of fighting for these empires to duke it out. Victory in Europe, or VE Day, was declared on May 8, 1945, celebrating the defeat of the fascist regimes of Hitler and Mussolini. And after the US brutally bombed the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in the only 2 instances of nuclear warfare to this day, Japan surrendered to the Allied forces on September 2, 1945. And with that, World War II was officially over. It can be tempting to think about global conflicts like you would a movie, where the heroes defeat the villains to make the world a better place for everyone. But there's no such thing as a good guy when it comes to imperialism or nationalism. And unfortunately, these ideas didn't end with the conclusion of World War II. We're seeing a rise in nationalism again today as people become less accepting of others and more interested in protecting their own national interests. And as nationalism increases, empires are starting to push their boundaries again, like in the Russo-Ukraine war. And while you personally might not be able to single-handedly end fascism, it is important to pay attention to the rising nationalism in our world today. By understanding the history of these ideas, together we can challenge them to help make our connected world a more peaceful and just place for everyone. If you're enjoying Study Hall Modern World History and are interested in taking online courses and earning college credit, visit gostudyhall.com or click on this button to learn more. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.